Rebuilding yourself starts with a single, uncomfortable truth. You can't change what you refuse to acknowledge. And acknowledgement requires vulnerability. The kind that makes your chest tighten. The kind that feels like standing in the middle of a room with all the lights on, no walls to hide behind. It's terrifying, isn't it? We spend so much of our lives trying to outrun discomfort, to smooth over the rough edges, to pretend we're fine, even when we're unraveling. But here's the thing, pretending doesn't heal, avoiding doesn't fix, hiding doesn't help. The only way to truly rebuild is to stand in your truth, however messy it may be, and say, this is where I am. And that's hard because vulnerability has a cost. It requires you to admit that you don't have it all together. It asks you to look in the mirror and see not just your strength, but also the parts of you that have been neglected, the ones you don't want others to see. It demands honesty about the places where you've fallen short, the relationships you've let slip away, the ways you betrayed your own values. And that kind of honesty can feel brutal. But do you know what's worse? Carrying the weight of a life that doesn't feel like your own, simply because you were too afraid to break it apart and start again. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that being strong means being invulnerable. That if we just keep pushing, keep performing, keep pretending, we'll eventually become the kind of person who never wavers, never struggles, never doubts. But that's not strength, that's armor. And armor may protect you, but it also keeps you from truly living. It keeps you from connection, from growth, from the kind of transformation that can only come when you let yourself be fully seen. Vulnerability isn't about oversharing. It isn't about spilling your struggles to anyone who will listen. It's about being real with yourself first. It's about admitting, I'm exhausted from trying to be everything for everyone. It's about saying, I don't know who I am anymore and I need to figure it out. It's about giving yourself permission to feel, to grieve, to process, to sit in the discomfort of uncertainty without rushing to fix it. Because here's the truth, the strongest people aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who allow themselves to break open and build something better from the pieces. Think about the people you admire most, not because they seem perfect, but because they are real. The ones who admit when they're struggling, who own their mistakes, who walk through life with an open heart, even when it would be easier to shut down. Those are the people who inspire change, not because they never fail, but because they refuse to let failure define them. That is what rebuilding yourself requires. Not a polished, courageous one of you, but a raw, honest, courageous one. And yes, vulnerability is risky. Not everyone will understand. Some people will judge, some will walk away. But here's the gift. When you stop pretending, you also stop attracting people who only love the version of you that performs. You start building relationships based on authenticity, not on who you think you need to be to earn love or acceptance. You find the kind of belonging that doesn't require you to shrink, to filter, to suppress the parts of yourself that are still healing. You realize that true connection doesn't happen in the moments where you have it all together. It happens in the moments where you allow yourself to be seen, even in your uncertainty, even in your struggles. So if you're standing on the edge of change, trying to rebuild your life in 2025, don't start with the big, bold actions. Start here. Start with the courage to be honest about where you are. Start by taking off the armor, even if it's just piece by piece. Start by allowing yourself to be vulnerable, not as a weakness, but as the foundation for real, lasting transformation. Because the strongest, most resilient version of you isn't the one that never struggles. It's the one that embraces every part of the journey, the messy, the uncertain, the unpolished, and decides to rebuild anyway. We all have stories playing in our minds. Stories that shape how we see ourselves, how we engage with the world, and how we define our worth. Some of these stories are empowering. They remind us of our strength, our resilience, our ability to grow. But many of them, maybe most of them, hold us back. They whisper doubts in our ears, convincing us that we're not good enough, that we always mess things up, that we are too much or not enough, that it's too late to change. And because we've been telling ourselves these stories for so long, they feel like the truth. But here's the thing, just because a story feels true doesn't mean it is. The human brain is wired to make sense of things. When something happens, when we experience failure, rejection, disappointment, our minds immediately try to connect the dots. And if we don't have all the information, we fill in the gaps with a story. Someone doesn't text back, they must be upset with us. A job interview doesn't go well, we're not smart enough. A relationship ends, we were never lovable to begin with. These aren't facts, these are interpretations, and interpretations can be rewritten. Rebuilding yourself in 2025 requires questioning the stories you've been carrying. Where did they come from? Were they handed to you by someone else? A parent, a teacher, an ex, a society that tells you who you should be? Have you been living by a narrative that no longer serves you? One of the bravest things you can do is stop and say, this isn't my story anymore. Because if a story is keeping you small, if it's making you doubt your worth or your potential, it's time to put it down. But rewriting your story doesn't mean simply replacing a negative thought with a positive one. You can't just slap a shiny new affirmation over years of self-doubt and expect it to stick. It means getting curious about your patterns. It means digging deeper and asking yourself, what else could be true? Maybe that mistake you made at work doesn't mean you're incompetent. Maybe it means you're learning. Maybe that breakup doesn't mean you're unworthy. Maybe it means you're making room for something better. Maybe the struggles you faced don't mean you're broken. Maybe they mean you're still standing, still fighting. There's a quote that says, you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. The same is true for the stories we tell ourselves. If you want to rebuild yourself in 2025, you have to create an environment that supports a different narrative. Surround yourself with people who see your potential, not just your past mistakes. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to a friend. Stop looking for evidence that confirms your old story and start looking for proof of a new one. And here's the most important part. Don't wait until you feel different to start living differently. Your brain will try to keep you in the familiar even when the familiar is painful. It will tell you to stay small, to stick with the old narrative because it's safe. But transformation doesn't start with waiting for belief, it starts with action. Act as if you already believe the new story. Show up for yourself as if you are already capable, already strong, already worthy. And eventually, your mind will catch up. You are not the same person you were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You have learned, you have grown, you have survived things you never thought you would. That alone is proof that your story is still unfolding. You are allowed to change the way you see yourself. You are allowed to release the labels that no longer fit. You are allowed to step into a version of yourself that feels truer, fuller, more alive. So as you step into 2025, ask yourself, what story do you want to tell? And more importantly, what story do you want to live? Discomfort is the space between who you are and who you're becoming. It's the tension of growth, the awkwardness of transformation, the moment where everything feels unfamiliar and uncertain. And if you're serious about rebuilding yourself in 2025, you're going to have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Most of us spend our lives avoiding discomfort at all costs. We stay in jobs that drain us because leaving would mean uncertainty. We hold on to relationships that no longer serve us because being alone feels terrifying. We don't speak up, don't take risks, don't push ourselves because the unknown is messy and unpredictable. And our brains are wired for this. Our survival instincts tell us to seek safety, to stay with what's familiar, to resist anything that feels uncertain. But the truth is, nothing keeps us stuck more than the fear of discomfort. Discomfort isn't a sign that something is wrong, it's proof that something is shifting. When a snake sheds its skin, it doesn't slide effortlessly into the next phase. It rubs up against rocks, pushing and scraping until the old layer peels away. That's what real growth feels like. It's awkward, it's painful, it makes you question everything. But on the other side of it, there's something new, something more aligned, something more you. Rebuilding yourself means sitting in the middle of that discomfort and resisting the urge to run. It means recognizing that the hardest moments, the ones where you feel lost, uncertain, out of place, are the ones shaping you the most. Think about any time in your life when you truly changed. Was it when everything was easy and predictable, or was it when you were forced to stretch, to adapt, to face something hard? Real transformation doesn't happen when things are comfortable. It happens when you're standing on shaky ground, unsure of what comes next, but choosing to move forward anyway. But here's the thing about discomfort. It's not just about enduring it, it's about learning from it. Most of us experience discomfort and immediately try to numb it. We distract ourselves with social media, with work, with relationships, with anything that keeps us from sitting in the stillness of our own thoughts. But discomfort has something to teach you about what you need, about what's been holding you back, about where you're meant to go next. When you stop running from it and start leaning into it, you begin to understand yourself in ways you never have before. Maybe for you, discomfort looks like setting a boundary and feeling the tension that comes with disappointing people. Maybe it looks like walking away from a version of yourself that was built to please others. Maybe it looks like starting over in a new city, a new career, a new mindset, with no guarantee of success. Whatever it is, know this. The moment you lean in instead of pulling away, you take your power back. You stop being controlled by fear and start shaping your own life. And yes, it will be hard. There will be moments when you want to turn back, when the old, familiar ways seem easier, when you wonder if any of it is worth it. But growth isn't supposed to feel easy. It's supposed to feel uncertain, uncomfortable, even a little terrifying, because that's how you know you're doing something real. That's how you know you're stepping into a version of yourself that isn't just a repetition of the past, but a true evolution. If you are feeling uncomfortable right now, if you are in the middle of a transition, if you are questioning everything, if you are stepping into something unknown, good. That means you are exactly where you need to be. Don't rush through it. Don't try to fast forward to the part where it all makes sense. Sit in it, learn from it, let it shape you, because one day you will look back on this season and realize it was the turning point. The moment you stopped playing small, the moment you stopped avoiding growth, the moment you chose to rebuild, not in spite of discomfort, but because of it. When we talk about rebuilding ourselves, we often focus on external markers of success. The new job, the weight loss, the financial breakthrough, the relationship that finally feels right. But true rebuilding doesn't start with achievement. It starts with alignment. It starts with asking yourself, am I living a life that actually reflects what matters to me? So many of us are living lives that look good on paper, but feel hollow in reality. We chase goals that we were taught to want, follow paths that were laid out for us, and make decisions based on expectations rather than authenticity. And then we wonder why we feel restless, why even after achieving the things we thought we wanted, something still feels off. The answer isn't to chase another achievement or set another external goal. It's to stop and ask, is the life I'm building in alignment with who I truly am? Alignment isn't about perfection. It's about honesty. It's about being radically clear on what you value, what brings you fulfillment, what kind of person you want to be, and then making decisions that reflect those truths, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's hard. It means being willing to let go of things that don't fit anymore, even if they once did. It means walking away from the version of yourself that was built to make others comfortable and stepping into the version of yourself that feels real. One of the biggest reasons people feel stuck is because they're living out of alignment with their values without even realizing it. Maybe you value creativity, but you've boxed yourself into a rigid career that leaves no room for it. Maybe you value deep relationships, but you've been so focused on external success that your connections have suffered. Maybe you value adventure, but you've convinced yourself that you have to wait until you have more time, more money, more security to start living fully. The disconnect between what you say matters and how you actually spend your time is where dissatisfaction grows. Rebuilding yourself means bridging that gap. It means identifying the things that truly matter to you, not the things society tells you should matter, but the things that, when you engage with them, make you feel alive. And then, little by little, reshaping your life so that your actions, your choices, and your daily routines reflect those values. It's not about making a massive, dramatic change overnight. It's about recalibrating, shifting, choosing again and again to move in a direction that feels right rather than just expected. But here's the thing, alignment requires sacrifice. It requires letting go of the things that don't fit, even when they're comfortable, even when they're what you've always known. Sometimes it means leaving a job that provides financial stability but drains your soul. Sometimes it means walking away from a relationship that no longer supports your growth. Sometimes it means disappointing people who have a different vision for your life than you do. And that's not easy. But the alternative is spending your life in a version of reality that feels misaligned, where you wake up every day feeling like something is missing, but never quite knowing what. And don't mistake alignment for ease. Just because you're on the right path doesn't mean it will be effortless. Sometimes living in alignment with your values means making hard choices, taking risks, stepping into the unknown. But the difference is, when your life is aligned with what truly matters to you, even the challenges feel meaningful. Even the struggles feel like part of something bigger. There is a sense of rightness even in the difficulty, because you know you are living a life that is yours, not a life built on expectations, but one built on truth. So if you feel lost, if you feel like something in your life isn't quite fitting, don't start by trying to fix the symptoms. Start by looking at the foundation. Ask yourself, what do I truly value? Am I living in a way that reflects those values? And if the answer is no, start making the shifts, big or small, to realign. Rebuilding yourself in 2025 isn't about becoming someone new. It's about stripping away everything that isn't truly you and creating a life that feels like home.